You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
You got the wrong guy. I'm the dude, man.
Take it easy. You're the good guys.
Are you ready for a war?
Dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
The more you drink, the better they sound. This is Truth Theorem Radio with your hosts, Warren, Rob, and Jason.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of
Truth Theorem Radio.
episode number 2.4. Bing! Did I get a good bing? That was all right. That's all right.
great.
You had to get 2 for last week. Yes. So you got it. We missed.
Now, we had a little technological malfunction last week.
And when he says little, like the whole studio was gone.
Yes.
I don't know what happened. We're still scratching our heads, but I think we got to figure it out.
I think it was
we got it working.
I think it was the Department of Science and Technology.
They
shut us down. They didn't like our little disclosure skit that we did. And
It's possible. They go, oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, we'll show them.
I think somebody faked the Mogwai after midnight. That's what happened.
In your
The
face.
Gremlins now.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it was interesting last week. But sorry for all those that you missed it. And we're back now.
We certainly appreciate you hanging with us there.
That is correct.
We've upgraded our studio, so we're bigger and stronger than ever now.
That's right.
Yeah. We got the video going. We got video going in the
Can
chat
people
room
see us?
on
Can they see us?
InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Yep. There's a live video chat room there. Hello to everybody in the chat room. Thanks for everybody showing up. We'll hold your questions for the guests and call in for the guests later on. Who is our guest today?
Right. Grant Cameron today.
We got Grant Cameron coming up today from the Presidential UFO website.
That's going to be exciting. Hey, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Joe in Chicago.
Thanks, Joe, for producing our show.
And we got Dill over here making it happen here.
Dale the engineer.
Thanks,
And
Dill. We have a new addition.
we
to the
have a
show.
new addition.
A new edition.
Shyla is now part of Truth Theorem Radio. She's going to do a segment that we're putting together. It's going to talk about all the upcoming paranormal events that are going on around the country.
Yeah.
And so if anybody has any that they would like us to talk about, you can go ahead and ship them on over to us. Oh, we also have, I guess no one can spell theorem.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we have solved this problem.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
got
did.
this. We got this.
Did we even tell you?
No.
Oh, no.
Rob, we didn't tell Rob. We never told Rob.
I'm out of the loop.
It's cool,
We
though.
have changed the spelling so it's easier
What?
for everybody.
Oh, no, we didn't like respell theorem.
What?
We changed the
we
spelling
did the
of
next best thing.
That's right.
though.
That's right. So now to get to our website, it's GOTTR.com.
Perfect.
There
Easy.
it is.
Piece of
Ready?
cake.
Yes.
Just gottttr.com.
That's right.
It. Got
Wow, that is
TTR.com. There you go.
Uh-huh.
So go check it out. And we also have a brand spanking new website that just got launched this morning.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
It's
I was in the
cool.
bathroom a long time.
That's right.
You guys got a lot done.
We are, since we didn't have a show last week, we decided to double our efforts on upgrading the show. And we
Once we stopped crying, we actually were productive.
we got some stuff done. Yeah.
Wow.
We upgraded equipment, built a new website.
Right.
Super duper.
Rewired the whole studio.
We have video going.
I'm waving
Hi, we got
Hello.
video going. For everybody watching the video, we got video
Well,
going.
I think the video thing, though, isn't it kind of like that motion thing? When you
Only
wave,
when you
like
do that.
No,
Oh.
actually, it's pretty fluid. It's,
Is it pretty fluid?
There's a
Alright.
slight delay from, I'm watching it here on my computer, and there's a little bit of a delay. So,
Alright, good.
For everybody watching, hello, I'm Jason.
I didn't
right
want-
here.
And I'm Rob.
There's Rob.
And I'm Warren. And if you're not
Ta-da.
watching, go to InceptionRadioNetwork.com/listen live. And there it is right
Yeah,
there.
there's a link
There's
to
a
get to the
live
video.
video.
Yeah.
And, or just come on over and chat with us in the chat room.
Yep.
I think are we sitting in the dark in the video feed? Is it kind of dark in here or no?
Shouldn't be.
No, actually, it
good.
looks fairly
Does
decent.
that romantic lighting that
It gets a little better when the sun goes down.
Man,
a little more, but
there's 3 guys sitting in a video and you're talking about romantic.
I'm sorry.
Come on.
Sorry.
down, boy, down.
No.
So, okay, who we got theorem thoughts? Who wants to start off theorem thoughts today?
I can kick it off.
Okay,
I can kick
it off. Kick it off,
This is
Warren.
pretty cool.
Go ahead, Warren.
Now, everybody knows, well, maybe not everybody, because I just found out, but I thought it was cool. There's going to be a UFO conference in, let's see, where is it? In Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah, thanks. I'm prepared.
In anywhere particular in the state of Arizona, Warren?
I'm going to find out right now. It's too much pressure. But anyway, Travis Walton is going to be talking there, John Goulet, one of the eyewitnesses to Travis Walton's abduction, who has never spoken before, is actually going to be on stage and tell his side of the story.
How long ago was that event?
Oh, man. That was in 75.
So he's had a long time to think about this.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder why he took so long.
Well, I don't know. I thought maybe it's because it was so traumatic that the money just wasn't worth it.
Okay, just for example, last week, Riley Martin, he had all of his experiences that he talked about. He waited 30 years to come out about it. I think that's not uncommon. I think a lot of these people, I was watching a deal on History Channel the other day about these Rendlesham Forest guys that had these experiences. They waited quite a while to write about it and come forth and admit to it and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's pretty common, really.
Wow.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's a long time. 1970, 75? What is it? That's a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah. But I'd love to hear what he has to say. I love, the update. But, I keep telling people in the chat room that I want to be abducted, and they keep telling me don't wish for that. That I should not be wishing for that.
Well, I got my symbol from RileyMartin.com, so I'm going.
Jason
if it ends, I got a ticket.
Jason has his ticket to ride, so I'll be in the trunk. I need to get my ticket, but he wants a handwriting analysis too.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't write very well.
You're worried that he's going to go, not you.
Yeah, no, there's an age limit. You got to be over 18, kid. When you learn how to make your big letters.
I just got my book, too,
back.
The Coming of 10.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, I did. My wife just texted me here just a few minutes ago and said it came.
Is it an e-book or a book?
No, it's
the
original one that he wrote back in the day, yeah.
Oh.
It's not even a Millennium edition. It's the original.
An original copy.
Signed and everything.
Wow.
Yep.
I know what I'm borrowing.
I'm excited to go check it out.
I'd like to read it.
Yeah.
RileyMartin.com if you want to get your own. And
we really liked him.
Too.
He was great. He was a really good,
He was fun.
guest.
He was fun.
Very fun.
Very fun.
So, Rob, what about your little...
Is it my turn for Theorem Thoughts?
We need a little sound bite. Huh?
We said that last time.
We have no fans ponying up giving us sound bites for Theorem Thoughts.
Now, all you UFOlogists who you all know all these things, but I'm gonna give this to you. I got this off MUFON's UFO network. It's the 10 things you should do if you see a UFO.
10 things.
10 things. I've actually never seen one personally. Or I've seen unidentified objects, but
you're going to be prepared.
I'll be prepared. And there's 10 right here, so this is important. The number one, of course, is always remain calm.
Okay, I'll buy that.
So, you've never seen this thing, but remain calm. 2, be objective. Not all UFOs are extraterrestrial. So we know that some of them are drones, some of them are government things. So don't assume that it's an alien brother from another planet.
Okay.
3, use a camcorder or a camera if you happen to have one with you. And most of us have smartphones now or will soon. So they have the camera on there. So use that. Number 4, if you have a tape recording device, tape what's happening and describe what's happening.
Okay.
So you have this verbal description of what you're seeing. I think that was very clever. Not many of us carry those, but the smartphones also have a recorder on them.
Yeah.
That's why they call them smartphones.
Holy cow.
You got it.
That's smart, Rob.
Okay. Number 6. If the UFO left some trace of its presence, do not disturb the area. So stay the heck away.
That's like a crime scene investigation. Sure.
Like a crime scene. I am afraid that I would not. I'm very curious. So I'm bad in that area already.
I'm probably with you.
I'll
be like, chow, chow, chow.
It's bad. Number 7, if it's at a distance, at an arm's length, what would it take to cover it up the object? So I guess you hold your hand out, right? And you look at the object, and if I could hold up a quarter and it covers it, then that's how I measure it and give it that kind of size description. I thought that was kind of clever.
Yeah.
Number 8, try to judge the distance from you to the object, its altitude and its speed. I am horrible at that. It's going really fast.
Now, what I found
really fast and it's high.
Yeah.
What I found from MUFON things is they kind of got a deal where, like, how big would it be? How big would you have to be holding something at arm's length for it to cover the object?
We just covered that, right?
Tic-tac, baseball.
Or a quarter, like I just said.
And I like that. I know what I really found that interesting because that's kind of part of the MUFON handbook and how they teach you how to do that. That's
but how do you judge the distances? I'm not good at. Are you judging the distance? Very good? Like it's 100. It's 100 meters. I'm still converting meters and yards. And number 9, this is the one that I have I was like, what? If you should encounter some type of extraterrestrial being associated with the craft, be prepared to take evasive action to protect yourself. What? No,
Really?
Yeah.
You never know, man.
They could have shortened that, just said, run away, run away.
Vaseline.
It would have been quicker. But, me, I'm like, if they took all the trouble to land near me and get out, I can't be unneighborly, run.
Really?
But I'm not, I'm not going to be like some of the other guys and take a weapon with me or anything. But, yeah, no, I want.
Really?
I'm up for it. You're going to run away?
More than likely.
Oh, I'm up for it. And then the 10th one, of course, is to immediately report the event to a UFO research organization, which of course would be MUFON, because that's what they do. But hey, no,
Good advice.
I'm not running away. So all you sissies, you go ahead and run away.
No, I probably would.
All right. Maybe I'm not that brave. I don't know.
I'd love to see you not run away.
Really?
Yeah, because they'd eat you while I was running. Yeah, I would like that.
Oh, that Rob's really squishy. And I like that creamy center.
The slow one always loses out.
Exactly.
What you got, Jason?
I've got a little update here from the Paradigm Research Group, which is our good buddy Steve Bassett. We had if you missed our interview with Steve Bassett. Check it out. He's trying to get the Disclosure Petition 2 up and running. And I don't know if y'all heard about the Disclosure Petition 1 fiasco, but the White House has set up this petition site, and it's required to get X amount of signatures over a certain amount of time. And then if the requirements are met, then it's guaranteed to be addressed by the White House cabinet, whatever. Okay. So Steve Bassett put together this disclosure petition saying, hey, tell us everything you know about UFOs. And they came back and said, we don't know nothing about UFOs. Oh. And so
what a shock.
Yeah. And so here he is. He's putting Disclosure Petition 2 back together. Let me read it here. It says, the Obama administration has formally stated that the U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside of our planet, or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race.
Excuse me.
Exactly.
Got a little frog in your throat there.
Excuse me.
If true, what was the Clintons' Office of Science and Technology Policy investigating from March 1993 to October 1996 in concert with billionaire Clinton friend Lawrence Rockefeller? Those who have not spoken.
Are you having a seizure?
Publicly of this include President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Obama Transition Chairman John Podesta, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, Vice President Al Gore, and Governor Bill Richardson. And he's got confirming documentation here attached to all this, and he's going to submit this all. He's been working with the White House website, trying to get them all figured out, because I guess he submitted this before, and the website crashed and it was down continuously for maintenance, and people couldn't sign up and log in. So they're trying to resolve all those issues before he launches it again. So keep.
Government snafu. What happened?
Keep looking at our website. We're going to keep you up to date on this, so you can sign on and sign this petition, and let's know what the government knows.
Really?
I'm going to sign up. I'm going to push it with everybody else, all the other ufologists and people who like UFOs like us. I'm signing in and everything, but I really have no expectations of the government rolling over and giving me anything.
No,
I'm hopeful, but sure. But
it's probably not going to.
Yeah, no. Our government has so many secrets. They have secrets of their secrets, and they know, only 2 people know the secret of this secret.
Yeah, it's compartmentalized.
It's very compartmentalized.
When a president of the United States has to go, do we have a UFO project? You're not allowed to know, sir. What?
No, I was in the Navy, and I've been assigned to a ship, and it was a guided missile cruiser, and I know all about compartmentalization because here I was a deck seaman, I was a nobody, and there was many areas where you just couldn't go. You just weren't allowed to go in the missile room or the computer control center or any of these, even the boiler room. None of that. That's all off limits. You've got to be, you got to work in there to go in there. And so I had no idea of the inner workings of the ship, and I even, being there, living there, existing there on a daily basis, no idea what was going on in the other room.
But our president, he's not allowed to know?
There's so many levels of secrecy above the president, and that's designed in so that he doesn't have to know about these things.
Crazy.
Where do you think that $2.3 trillion got lost to?
If we knew that, it wouldn't be lost.
I'm going to Hawaii next.
You better be taking me.
No, my kid got an A in computer science. No, just kidding.
Wow.
So our next guest coming up, Grant Cameron. He is, I guess, author, creator of the Presidential UFO website, and he has done all kinds of research about president's involvement with UFO research and whatnot. So it'll be exciting to talk to him.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions for him.
He's a big proponent for the disclosure petition with Steve Bassett. So.
I would think so.
Right on. Well, let's take a break, and we'll come back with Grant Cameron.
Bassett. I got Steve Bassett on
with Grant Cameron.
We'll be right back.
Truth Theorem Radio.
Hello, everybody. It's Warren, Rob, and Jason with
Truth Theorem Radio.
Bing.
And we...
Whoa.
What?
That was a rough... Was that a bing?
Yeah, I'm a little hoarse.
Yeah?
I can tell.
Yeah, I've been standing on the roof for the last 20 minutes.
What are you doing up there?
I'm trying to spread the word about Truth Theorem Radio, and I thought
up on like the 6th level?
Yeah, on the roof.
Nobody's going to hear you up there, dude. That's not going to work.
Is there a better way to spread the word?
I would try and get our listeners involved.
Well, I'm trying to. I called some people and I got an extra chair, but nobody showed up. I've been screaming for the last 20 minutes.
No, there's lots of ways our listeners can help us.
That's right. You guys can go to Facebook, like our Facebook page.
Like our Facebook page. You'll get updates of all our upcoming guests and shows and whatnot.
We're also putting our live stream up on YouTube, so if you missed it, you can check it out there. We've also got all of our past shows up there, too.
And you can vote for us on Top Paranormal.
That's right.
And leave a comment. There's all kinds of good reviews and comments on there.
Absolutely.
I've still got a chair up on the roof I have available if anybody wants to join me.
We're going to do it different.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and pack that back down here.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey.
They can also download our show on iTunes, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Subscribe to the RSS feed.
Absolutely. Yep. So, all you listeners out there, it's time for you to help us out. Spread the word about Truth Theorem Radio.
Hey, are you guys going to help me go up on the roof and get my stuff down?
Well, what do you got up there?
You just got a couple chairs and a cooler, right?
Oh, yeah, it's a couple of chairs. They're lazy boys. And the cooler's a big double-wide freezer. I got some steaks up there, and I've got the grill going.
What? How long are you going to be up there?
So I'm standing there levitating this cow, and all these humans were looking at it, didn't know what was going on. That's great.
Hey, everybody, it's Norg!
Hey, everybody.
What's mutating, Norg?
My left tentacle, but it fell off the other day. You know, guys, I really want to go fly over Arizona again.
Oh, have you heard the noises I've been making around the world? Humans are telling.
Guys, when is my human Riley being abducted? The Riley Knights really miss their human daddy.
He's a good guy. I miss Riley.
Hey, kill the band!
What?
Kill the band, everybody!
What's the matter?
Truth Theorem Radio is about to start.
Oh, Truth Theorem. Right, there it is. Come on, guys. Turn it up, turn it up.
It's all part of the plan.
Are you sure this is legal?
I don't know. It's fun though, isn't it?
And we are back with Grant Cameron.
Okay.
I am so excited.
Yeah, I think we've got him on the horn here. Grant, are you with us?
I'm with you, gentlemen, and ready to go.
All
Right
right.
on.
Cool.
Success.
Just a quickie. Grant Cameron has been investigating UFO stuff since the mid '70s. Started with his own personal sighting. He's done a lot of research on the work of Wilbert Smith, who headed up the Canadian government and UFO investigation. He's co-authored many books. He's and currently the, I guess, co-author, creator, brainchild behind the presidential UFO website.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
That was all correct. Very good.
Yeah.
I didn't miss
And
anything.
the Hillary website and the Barack Obama website.
Cool.
Oh,
Okay.
man, I can't wait to get into
UFO
those.
And the Barack Obama UFO websites.
Oh, I can't wait to get into
No,
those.
Nothing goes on there because they don't really do anything about it. So
yeah.
That's an easy one to
when they
maintain.
when they were running for government, for president, we had a lot of articles going up there. But since Obama was elected, he's done diddly squat. So nothing's gone up since he got elected.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's bad, right?
Yeah, I think that's.
For us, it's bad.
I think it's not
For him, it's
recommended.
good.
Now that's not the same story with past presidents though, because I kind of looked at your presidential UFO website and thumbed through there a little bit, and holy crap, I could spend about 3 months reading all the stuff that you've got on there about past presidents.
Yes. Sure. Some of them were very interested. None of them really, I don't think, really got anywhere in trying to get to the bottom of it. But there was at least 3 of them that were fascinated with the subject.
Now, but before we go to the presidents, because I know that's juicy, I want to go back to the beginning, back in 1975, the Charlie Red Star incidents and stuff. Can you tell us about that? Because I wasn't familiar with that before we started to talk
Okay,
about it.
well, when I started, I was actually going to university at the time, and I had really absolutely no interest, and I can never recall even having thought about the subject of UFOs or extraterrestrials or whatever. The only related thing I was very interested in life after death, the reincarnation studies of Dr. Ian Stevenson and stuff. That's the kind of stuff I was doing back then, Edgar Casey. And so when I was going to university, I did, a whole term on death and dying, going to the hospital, asking weird questions of the people who dealt with the dying people and stuff like that. And then what happened was I live at just about 60 miles north of the U.S.-Canada border in the coldest area in the world. It's the coldest large city in the world. And anyway, in 1975, about 35 miles southwest of the city I live in, Winnipeg, there was a bunch of sightings taking place, and it was being picked up by the media, newspaper, television, and back then, what we used to do is just, cruise the city, just drive around in the car. And I said to my friends, I said, well, this stuff is being seen out there. Why don't we go out and see what everybody's looking at? And assuming that we'd go out there and see nothing. And nothing happened. My friend, we sort of put it off. And then about 2 months later, the sightings were still going on. It was still being reported and this sort of stuff. And suddenly the local TV station actually caught this thing on the ground. They had surrounded it on the ground. They had gone out a number of times trying to film this thing. A number of TV stations had gone out there trying to film it. And they got lucky the one night, and as it jumped off the ground, they happened to catch this thing on film. And the film went worldwide. NBC picked it up and played it, and it's been on a number of documentaries. And at that point, I said, well, come on, let's go see what everybody's looking at. And so we went out and to see this Charlie Red Star. It actually had a name. It was seen in this town of Carmen, Manitoba. It was seen so often that they'd actually given it a name, and they would advertise in the newspaper, shop for Charlie Red Star shops. And it was a big thing in this town of about a little over 2,000 people. And so we went out there and we drove around for about an hour. And as I said, I had no interest in astronomy or anything related to outer space, and so we saw, I think it was Venus setting on the western horizon, and it looked kind of neat. And I figured, well, if that's what everybody's looking at, that's not very impressive. And we drove around for about an hour and figured, well, this is a total waste of time. Of course, when we come out, nothing's going to happen. And we were just driving up. My friend who was driving the car, who's I'm still friends with, have breakfast with him once a week, was driving back into town, and he said, well, we'll drive back into Carmen one more time, and if nothing happens, we're going home. And if we hadn't seen anything, I never would have gotten into the phenomena. And so we turned around, we're driving back into Carmen. It was about an hour after we got there, and this thing flew right in front of the car. And as I've told people, when it comes to ufology, you can believe, if you haven't seen anything, you can either believe or disbelieve. That's all you can do. But if you see it, you know. And there was no question in anybody's mind. There was three of us. I was in the front seat with my friend. There was another guy in the back seat, and nobody said, well, is that it? I wonder if that's what everybody's looking at. The minute this thing appeared and flew in front of the car, it was bobbing up and down. It was pulsing. It looked like it was alive. And as it flew in front of the car, everybody just went, that's it. There it is. There it is. Wow. And I can still remember as he was stopping, because it was gone across the road, and it was going behind a set of school buses. And so my friend.
Did we just lose you?
Stay with us. Stay with us, Internet.
Oh, did we just
off the highway, so I could see as it went in behind these school buses. And for my friend, we have a conversation, and people are actually very surprised that this friend of mine was involved, because he's never talked about it. For a majority of the people, and I used to take tours out there. I used to take people out there to see this kind of stuff, and this would involve well over 100 people. Almost none of them, they all went on with their life. With me, it was like a switch was turned. I sort of went a little wacko, and I couldn't get enough of it. I just went out 2 nights later, and I dragged all my friends out there to see this thing. And the second night, it actually came right at us the second night, and it was very close. It was maybe a mile away and a couple 100 feet in the air. And I can still remember that night. There was about started with 25 people. Most of my friends decided after about an hour they were going home. I'm totally crazy, and I kept pleading with them to stay. No, you got to see this thing. I mean, if you see this, it'll just be fantastic. And they all just said, no, we're hungry. We're going back to Winnipeg for pizza. So the majority of my friends took off, and there was one other car. There was cars all over the place. People going out to this area to see these UFOs. So the people that were in the other car, we'd never met them anywhere. They just were out there looking, trying to see this thing the same as us. And I can remember as it was coming, there was people swearing and yelling, and it was like being at a football game where the home team is about to score a touchdown, and the one girl couldn't see it because it was bouncing around the sky. It was moving about 8 inches in the field of vision as a flash before it actually got in close, and it was moving around. She couldn't see it. She was crying. The guy had a camera, and this is when motor drives first came out on cameras. And I can remember he was going, and he was just unloading the camera as this thing was coming at us. Oh. And so that was the second night. And then when this happened, they drove off to chase this thing, and I stood there and I thought, man, this is amazing. Why is nobody? There must be piles of people in this town who have seen this, because the reports were that lots of people had seen it, they'd filmed it and this sort of stuff. So I just sort of quit university. I finished my courses, but I couldn't get enough of it. And I just went out there and I interviewed everybody that I could find in the town. And at one point I had like over 300 people on a list of people I hadn't even interviewed yet. Because what would happen is you'd go to somebody and they'd say, well, how did you find out about me? Who do you know? And I'd say, well, someone told me you'd seen something. And then they would say, oh, okay, and they would tell you what they saw. And I'm not the only one. Then they'd give you about 5 names of other people who had seen it. I'm not the only one that saw it. And so this list kept growing. And so what I did was I put this manuscript together with a woman whose husband owned the airport there. And then I promoted this manuscript through Canada, through all the publishers, and people read it, but nobody was really that interested. The main publisher who should have published it was in Winnipeg, which is a city of about 700,000 people, and everybody here had heard about it. Everybody knew who Charlie Red Star was. And I can remember the rejection letter came back from the main publisher in my main city here and said, Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers. Oh. And it was at that point that I just sort of said, sightings is a total waste of time. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting. I can tell you all the bizarre stories of, trying to jump on this thing and the story, getting close and stuff like that. And people listen to it and it's kind of impressive. And then it's on, well, what's the next story? They just on to the next story that people really didn't care. So I sort of gave up on sightings. And that's when I went into trying to find out, I knew what I had seen. I'm not stupid. My son's a pilot. My father's a pilot. I'm not a pilot, but I've lived in that sort of environment where I'm not stupid. I know this was nothing that I've ever seen since, anything even remotely close to what I saw. It's not our technology. This is, to me, it was always extraterrestrial. And so I went to see what the government knew about what I had seen. I figured if I could get this many times and see this and track this thing down myself, the government or somebody has to know what's going on. So I went to Canadian government, really didn't solve the problem there. Then I went after this former president of Penn State University. He knew what was going on, and we thought we'd broken the UFO cover-up when we published that book, and that sort of fell apart because the reporter that was going to interview him was so scared of him that she dropped it once he said he wasn't going to talk and denied the whole thing. Oh. And he was going to leave his files to the U.S. president, to the Truman Library, and that's when I got to the president. And I started to look at what the president would know. He's the most powerful man in the world. What does he know about this most important subject? And that led to the presidents, and now I've sort of given up on the presidents, and I've sort of moved to the intelligence agencies and the black budget and all this kind of stuff as to who I think now might have the answers to this. Wow. So that's a long story to the answer.
Yeah, you basically irritated everybody then, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I've gone up the ranks, and I think most of the people that I've dealt with, whether it was the Canadian government or Walker was a guy who knew what was going on. So he would play the games, but most of the other people that I've run up against in government just really don't know and really don't care and just think that we're all a little strange and can't figure out why we're so obsessed with this and why we would believe in this kind of nonsense, because the government's a big place. And I know I worked at a university, and I know that I knew my little department, but I didn't know what was going on at the medical department downtown. I knew nothing about any other department. And I think it's the same in the government, that there is one small segment of the government or the whoever that's running this thing, but the rest of them really don't know. And they really just can't figure us out at all. Like what, these obnoxious people that, especially with me, I'm filing the FOIAs and stuff like this and pushing the envelope and just really annoying people to make them do stuff when they figure they've got more important things to do.
Wow. In case you're just joining us, you've got Grant Cameron, author of the Presidential UFO website. As long as you got a bunch of books too that you've wrote, right, Grant?
Well, there was the two. The first one never got published. I have it, and I've figured out what I should do with it. That's the whole manuscript about the Charlie Red Star thing, which was a set of sightings that went on for about a year. And I put all that together, and I sort of linked it into the Vietnam War and into the missile silos. Because when I went out there, I couldn't figure out why this small town of Carmen it's like a wheat farm area, no industry, nothing major, and I could never figure out why this prolonged set of sightings had taken place at this little tiny inconsequential town. And I went back, I was lecturing at Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and I went back to Carmen to talk to Bob Diemert, who was the guy who owned the airport there and who had the most sightings. And I asked him, I said, well, Bob, why do you think they were here? Why do you think all this happened in Carmen? And he said to me, he said, well, you know why they're here. And I said, no, Bob, I don't. In 30 years, I have no idea why they're here. And he said, you knew. You sure do know. I told you. And I said, no, I don't remember. And he said, well, the missile silos. And we have all the Minuteman III missile silos, which a lot of them have been taken out. But just 25 miles south is the U.S. border, and these missile silos are right along the border and run all the way down to Grand Forks Air Force Base, and Minot is the missile base. And so as soon as he said missile silos, I went, oh, shoot, and my first sighting had occurred 2 weeks after the end of the Vietnam War. And what I think had happened was all the U.S. missiles had gone on alert because the Americans had lost the Vietnam War, and it was the domino theory back then, and it was like what was going to go next, South Korea and then the Philippines, and there was this domino theory that communism was going to take over the world. And so the missile silos went on alert because nobody knew what was going to happen next. The UFOs picked up on this, and from the reports we got, they were actually chasing them, and they had come into the Canadian side, on the Canadian side of the border. And then the only anti-missile establishment that the Americans ever built, and I didn't realize this until a couple months ago, the only one that was actually put into operation just 80 miles south of Carmen, about 60 miles into the U.S. in North Dakota. And it was operational from about February till November of 1975. That's exactly when the flap went on. And they had all the missiles there, one megaton up to 5. And this was the old Star Wars type thing where they had a big radar site, which was called Nixon's Pyramid, which would pick up the missiles, and then it would alert this anti-ballistic missile base in North Dakota. And as the missiles were coming in, they would fire these first was sort of a long range, and if they missed with that, they had these short range missiles that they would take these missiles out. Because, of course, we all knew in Manitoba, because of the missiles, that if there was ever a nuclear war, we were the first to go, because the missiles were all just south of us on the U.S. side of the border. And, of course, the Russians would lob, one or two short and a couple long, and the short ones would land right on top of us. And everybody would be shooting missiles at each other, and we're right in the middle of it. So we always knew here, living here with these missile silos, that even though we didn't live in the United States, that if there was a nuclear war, we were gone first. So that was that's why I wrote the book, and I put it out, and it all sort of made sense. It was all pretty good, but it never really got published. And then we did the book with UFOs, MJ-12, and the government, which was basically the Eric Walker story. He talked about the Canadian government, what the Canadian government had done, Wilbur Smith, and his involvement, and the fact that he was a contactee and he believed in it, and he said that the flying saucers were real, and he'd seen the bodies and he'd seen the crafts and stuff like that. Was part of the book, but the vast majority of that, UFOs, MJ-12, and the government, was the story of Dr. Eric Walker, who actually got squealed on by another scientist. And when he was contacted about the rumored story that he had been at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at briefings that had been given on a crash flying saucer, this is 1950, he said, yeah, I was there, so what? And that led to this about 8 years of about maybe six or seven researchers. And I sort of coordinated the researchers. There was people who would say, oh, I can get him to talk. And I'd say, okay, fine, here's his phone number. And we had people from England and from Germany and the United States and Canada. And everybody would try to get this guy to talk, and they would all just sort of tell us what they'd found out and transcripts of interviews and stuff like that. And then we just put it in the book. And it was basically unedited. We just said, let's put exactly what he told all these different researchers. And so we figured the UFO, I was sure the UFO cover-up was over, because this guy was so powerful. He was chairman of the Institute for Defense Analysis, which is the top military think tank in the United States.
Pretty credible.
He was...
Yeah.
and he was, assistant secretary of defense, an assistant secretary of defense in Washington. This is when the briefings took place. He was in the Pentagon, in the E ring of the Pentagon. He was a very, very powerful guy. He had 14 honorary doctorate degrees. Had invented the homing torpedo. He's one of the guys in World War II that invented the homing torpedo. He invented what's this ultrasound that's used? That was his invention. Very, very powerful guy. Knew a lot of the presidents, and he was a guy who was basically telling us, yes, we've had some communication with extraterrestrials. Leave it alone. There's nothing you can do about it. You're wasting your time. And talked to us quite a bit indirectly. He always tried to sort of talk around it. He always said, this is something I don't talk about. And when we published that book, there was a reporter at Penn State University from the paper at Penn State who was given the assignment to go and talk to him. And it was at that point when he finally decided he wasn't going to talk on the phone, because usually you couldn't hang up the phone. And he just said, I deny it. I'm busy. Sorry. And he hung up the phone on her. And she was so scared that she wouldn't go back and do another interview with him. And that the book just sort of died there. And so that's when I pulled out of ufology for a couple of years. I was so depressed that nothing was really happening, that this big story that I thought was so important didn't go anywhere, that I just sort of gave up. And then when I got back in, I got back in by going to the UFO Congress when it was being held in Laughlin, Nevada. Saw a couple of lectures that really sort of fascinated me, and got into it sort of even more obsessed than I was the first round. And that's when I got into the presidents. I figured I was going to go after what the presidents knew, and I started going around to all the various presidential libraries looking for the documents that would link the presidents and find out what the real answer to what I saw in 1975 was.
What reasons were you given to leave it alone? What were some of the things he gave you?
Well, he just said, well, for example, he said it was a subject that he didn't talk about. I don't talk about this subject. And then people would push him.
So nobody would take his word for it when he said, leave it alone. I'm a brilliant guy. I'm a genius. I'm all these things.
Shut the hell up.
Yeah, go away. Leave me alone. Leave it alone. Don't poke the bear. But you're still poking the bear.
He would say, for example, he would say things like, and I just wrote an article that referred to, I referred to this thing that he said. He said, somebody was saying to him, you're an old man, and he's now died. He said, you're an old man. You have a chance to talk to history and give the story of what actually happened. And he said, why should we change the rules to satisfy your curiosity? Which of course led to the fact that there are rules. There is a government,
there's the mystery.
Or whoever is running this thing. There are rules and regulations that they follow. And he would say, unless you have the mind of Einstein, forget it. There's nothing you can do about it.
There we go.
That it's basically was giving us the impression that they really haven't gotten very far, that the best minds have worked on it, and they've only learned a very little. Like, for example, when he was asked about contact, whether there's been interaction with the ETs, he said, yes, a little bit. And but he basically it was something that for example, he told Stanton Friedman. Stanton Friedman really wasn't as impressed with Walker as we were, because every time Stanton phoned him up, he would tell Stanton nothing. And Stanton figured, well, he's not talking to me. Why should he talk to anybody else? So Stanton had a little bit of a different opinion. But he had told Stanton, he said, I haven't been involved in it for 25 years. And it was at that point, and this was about 1990 when Stanton did the second interview. He said, I haven't been involved for 25 years. So I went back 25 years and I went, this is 1965. And he lives in State College, Pennsylvania. And Kecksburg is 100 miles away as the crow flies. And Dr. Eric Walker had a big training thing for planes at Penn State University. Walker had his pilot's license. He had his own plane. And So when the Kecksburg thing happened, it appeared to me, well, he could just jump on a plane and fly to Kecksburg and could be there in like an hour. So we set up an interview with a guy in England who made the phone call. And I said, ask him about Kecksburg. Ask him whether he was at Kecksburg. And he said, well, Mr. Walker, you don't like to talk about this subject, but I've got a question for you. Maybe it's involved with UFOs or maybe it's not, but something happened in 1965 at Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Were you there? And Walker said, yeah, I was there. And he said, well, were you there officially? No, he said, I wasn't there officially. I was there with another military guy, but we weren't there officially. But he basically confirmed the fact he was at Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. And so these are the kind of things where it made the impression that he was there in 65. He was a guy who knew how the system worked. He knew how to contact. So when the Kecksburg thing happened, they called him into the Kecksburg crash. He did his thing, and then he went back to his own life, because I went actually to his library and looked at his files, and he actually, the day after Kecksburg, it happened on a Friday, on the Saturday morning, he was back at Penn State University. It was graduation, and he was giving the graduation speech at Penn State University. So he was the type of guy who would go in, do his thing, and I think that's what it is. It's this need to know thing. If they need you, you get called into the UFO situation, you do your little thing, and you go back to your life as an academic or as a head of a company or a researcher or whatever it is you do, and they just bring these people in, and there really isn't as much in terms of guys who are working on it for their whole life. It's just people are brought in, taken out, they're brought in for their expertise. Walker would have known the whole military establishment, Kecksburg. He would have known how it all worked. He did his job, and he went back to his own life. And he said, I've got more important things to do than this. And we asked him questions, for example, questions about Vannevar Bush, who was a good friend of his. Vannevar Bush was always rumored to be the guy who ran the UFO program. There's a number of documents that sort of refer to him as being the head guy. He was good friends with Walker. He was good friends with Bush's sister, with Bush. And so we asked him, for example, a question about ESP. He talked to us one time. He asked one of the researchers, he said, how good is your sixth sense? And the guy said, well, what do you mean? He said, unless, and then he got into this thing that ESP has got something to do with this. So then we were reading up on him and ESP, and we're trying to find references to him talking about ESP. And we found out that Vannevar Bush had put down ESP. He said this was nonsense. He wasn't going for this kind of stuff. So we asked Walker a question. Well, what about Vannevar Bush? He said ESP was a bunch of nonsense. And he said, do you think we have nothing better to do? He was a busy man. He didn't have time to work on this. He's got better things to do than play around with this kind of, and that was his explanation of why Vannevar Bush put down ESP. He had better things to do. He hadn't studied it. He didn't care about it, but it didn't mean that it wasn't really true. So he was the type of guy that really sort of knew what was going on. We did that, and then we did the presidential thing. But I'm not really a writer. My first book was basically I provided all the material. It was written by this guy who owned the airport, his wife. The second book was authored by T. Scott Crane. It was all my research, and T. Scott Crane, who was actually at Penn State, was a journalism student there, had actually put it together. And then the third book, I've had a couple of attempts to try to write the presidential book, and we actually had the book on the presidents was actually picked up by a New York publisher at one point, and they had 6 months before the publication to actually pre-sold 20,000 copies of the book. It would have been a New York Times bestseller, a huge thing, and it sort of fell apart. I want to get into the details, but it had sort of fallen apart. So the presidential book is still there, but I'm not a writer, and that's not my
well, I hope you do that. That sounds like a great idea, though. I'd love to see a book that has, the president's faces on it, and then their experience with UFOs and how they felt about it and their official position and so on and so forth. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, it was actually there. It was picked up by the advances were paid and everything was done. It was actually being advertised on Amazon in Europe and stuff. And let me tell you, when you pull out from a publisher, they ain't happy. I mean, it was kind of,
I would assume.
And the guy that was going to publish it was the guy that had published the Satanic Verses for the Muslim the big book, the Satanic Verses. So
he's not a coward.
It was a big publishing company.
That's so Grant, I have to ask you.
But my thing is research. I'm more into the game of trying to figure out what's going on and stuff like that.
I have to ask you. All this. You want disclosure, and I'm curious. What exactly do you think that the government would be able to say to you or to us that we could handle? Do you think the American people or the world could handle complete full disclosure?
No, I've often said, more in the last couple of years than before, I've said if I was in their position, I would do exactly what they're doing. I wrote an article. It's on my website. I think it's called "The Reason the Government is Covering Up the Truth." If you go to the presidentialufo.com and then you go to the articles section, you'll see an article there that I wrote about the cover-up, and it started out to be called "The 64 Reasons Why They've Decided Not to Tell You the Truth." And what I was doing there is I was trying to envision why Jimmy Carter backed out, because Jimmy Carter had a UFO sighting. He was very interested. He had talked very pro UFO before he got in, and once he got in, he didn't do anything. And same thing happened to Gerald Ford. Had made very pro UFO statements before he got to the president. As soon as he became president, he didn't do anything.
Well,
and
but
so
he did bump his head quite often, Gerald Ford. Yeah. So he has a built-in excuse. He was tripping and smacking his head on everything. I think I remember.
But Jimmy didn't, and Jimmy was also the guy who claimed that he would never tell a lie. Although I wrote an article, I don't think I ever published it, but where he was kind of a notorious liar, even though he claimed he would never tell a lie, and he taught Sunday school since he was 18 years old and stuff like this. And so I was trying to figure out what happened with Jimmy Carter. How did they turn him when he got in there? He was all pro UFO, and as soon as he got in, he went. And I was trying to think of what is the briefing. What do they say in the briefing that suddenly gets somebody to say, okay, I agree with the cover-up. Okay, I'm going to change my mind. Let's go along with the cover-up.
I know it's in the briefing.
He didn't want the cover-up before he got in.
The briefing is that we have an ark built, and your name is, we have a seat for you on the ark unless you talk, and then we have no seat for you. That's the briefing.
That's one of the possibilities. And I looked at all the different possibilities about the crash of the stock market. And I remember when I was, and that was one of the ones that kind of impressed me, because when I was working with what the Canadian government knew. What had happened was Wilbur Smith, the guy who had run the Canadian, he didn't call them UFOs. I think he sort of knew that was just a thing to throw everybody off. He always called them flying saucers. He never called them anything else but flying saucers, even though the term UFOs had been developed in 1952 by the U.S. Air Force. And so I was researching him, but he had already died. So what I was doing is I was researching the people that are around him. He had a sort of an inner circle of government people who had worked secretly with him on the side. And one of the people was a guy who had done metallurgical research for the Canadian military on Russian nose cones from rockets and stuff. And he would tell me all these stories about how, the kind of stuff, metal stuff that he'd done. He was a metallurgist expert. And he had worked with Wilbur Smith. And I remember he didn't want to talk to me, but Wilbur Smith's wife, I had gone to see her in Ottawa, which is about 1,500 miles away. And I was very young at the time. And she was so impressed that this young little boy from Winnipeg had come to interview her. She said, I want you to talk to Art Bridge. And that's his name. I've kept it secret for years, but his name was Art Bridge. And he lived near me in Manitoba. And she said, Art, I want you to talk to this young man from Winnipeg. And he really didn't want to talk. And when I came there, he actually said, this thing ruined my life. I wish I'd never gotten involved with it. And I could have gone somewhere, but because I was working on this UFO thing with Wilbur, it ruined my career and stuff. And I remember him telling me, and he was kind of a scary guy. His kids were not allowed in the room. His wife was not allowed in the room when I talked. And he threatened me many times that at no time was this to go anywhere, that I was never to tell anybody I'd ever talked to him about this. And I remember him at one point, he suddenly leaned over to me. He said, I'll tell you something, Grant. He says, if you know that they're going to release the UFO secret tomorrow morning, you sell everything you got, because tomorrow nothing's going to be worth anything. And it does make sense that, if you're invested, and I do a lot of investment. I like to play the stock market. If you own Shell and the rumor gets out that there's advanced technology where you don't need oil, I mean, Shell, if it's $100, it's going to open at about 60 and head for zero. And everybody's going to sit there and wait for it to get to 5 to buy back in. And once Shell goes, everybody else is going to start shorting everything, and everything's going to start moving down. It's this kind of thing that the government is a bunch of gutless wonders. These are guys who want to be absolutely sure about everything that they do. They're not into taking chances. And so if you're in a situation where I can present you an argument. If I were to give you the briefing, the 64 reasons, you'd go, well, holy cow, forget it. I mean, we can drill another oil well in Alaska. We can just sort of drag this thing on, and let's let the next guy deal with it. Let's just sort of put it off. Everything's okay. And even Walker had made this sort of impression. He said, what's the problem? He said, we haven't blown up the world yet. That's what he told us at one point.
Yeah.
What's the big problem?
Yeah.
And that's true. The world is moving along. Let's not rock the boat. We're going along. Let's try to figure this thing out. And you would have another part of the briefing where you'd say, Mr. President, they can abduct people. We can't stop them. They can mutilate cattle. We can't stop them. They can fly around. We can't stop them. We can't do anything. But, Mr. President, we are working on it as hard as we can. We have all these resources, and the longer you put this thing off, the better the chance that we can turn this thing around. Right now, if you let it go, we have no answers for people, and you don't want to put the president up in front of the American people, because within 5 minutes, someone's going to stand up and say, Mr. President, you're constitutionally responsible for the protection of the American people. It's been estimated that millions of people have been abducted by these aliens. Mr. President, what are you doing to stop it? There's nothing. But if you give the president 5 years, or if you give the military, whoever's working on this, 5 or 10 years, they may be able to stop it. And that's the argument they'll give the president. Hang on, Mr. President. We're working on it. The longer we drag this thing out, the more answers we're going to have, and the more we're going to be able to fight these people off if they're evil or whatever the thing is. And so there are a lot of reasons. If you take a look at why did Jimmy Carter turn, and you sit there and you put yourself in their position, you start to realize what's going on. And that's what I said is important for ufology, is to look at the other side to see how they're thinking. That it's like any football game where you're trying to pick off the signals from the other team, or baseball, you're trying to figure out how the other team operates. That's what ufology has to do. They got to figure out why the government is doing what it's doing, rather than just saying, well, it's evil and you should disclose and this sort of thing. So I'm more now in terms of saying, really disclosure doesn't happen because we really don't do anything. We haven't got any pressure. I have documents that I put on the presidential website. I put on as people might know, I filed all 100 Freedom of Information Act requests with the Clinton Library, because the Clintons were very interested in UFOs. Mm-hmm. I had gotten some documents from the Clintons when they were in the White House, so I knew who all the people were involved. I knew what had happened, and so when he leaves office, the president has 5 years to use his papers for his memoirs and whatever, and at the end of 5 years, it's freedom of information time. And first come, first serve. You file a request for UFOs, you're the first documents to be released from. So what I knew that it was coming due. I filed 100 Free Information Act requests, and what I filed, the main one that I filed, was give me all your files on UFOs, extraterrestrials, flying saucers, the regular UFO one. And I finally got it. I put it on the website about 3 or 4 months ago. It's 900 pages of material.
Holy cow.
There was no letters from the almost, well, there may be one, no more than 2 or 3 letters from the public to the president on the subject of UFOs. So if you're the president and nobody's writing on the subject, mm-hmm. Why would you do anything about it? He's got a million things going on. He's trying to get votes. He's trying to get reelected. Ufology really doesn't fit into the thing because nobody's really pushing their buttons. Nobody's really trying to force them out. The same as if you take a look at the Republican nomination that's going on right now, nobody has asked a UFO question of any of those candidates. So why should we expect those candidates to suddenly jump on the UFO issue and promote the UFO issue when nobody has really brought it up? It's a dangerous issue, as Kucinich found out in 2008 when he ran for president and got asked the UFO question and just got wiped out, and has always been known as the crazy man ever since. Why would you if nobody's on it? And even in 2004, to give you a prime example of how the UFO community is sort of their own worst enemy, in 2004, General Wesley Clark, who's a 4-star general with a unified command, he was in NATO, he's a unified command, and that is the level in the military when you're briefed into the UFO thing. Has to be a 4-star general, has to be a unified command. Wesley Clark was at that level. When he was campaigning, he went to New Hampshire, state when they were running. He was leading the Democrats at the time, and he was asked by Jay Buckley, who was a shuttle astronaut. He said, Miss General Clark, what is your vision for space? And he said, I wanted to be an astronaut, and I didn't have the sight, so I went into the military and I became a general and all this sort of stuff. And he starts talking, and then he starts talking about the fact that he believes that we can go past the speed of light. He said, I know that physicists say you can't. I've argued with physicists. I believe we can go past the speed of light. And I'm thinking, wow, this is like a 4-star general with a unified command. And he's talking about the fact we can go past the speed of light. And then at that time, I got a letter from one of the people associated with the birds, these military intelligence people who sort of have interactions with the UFO community. And I got somebody who knew them wrote me an email and said, I've been told by a bird that General Wesley Clark has been briefed on crash flying saucers. So I immediately, we knew where Clark was going. He was campaigning, and he was going to, like in Iowa, they have the caucuses, so they have the town halls and stuff like this. And he's meeting and answering people's questions in town halls. So we set up these things with different states. I went to the MUFON state directors in a number of the states where I knew he was going and said, I need you to ask Wesley Clark in a town hall in front of everybody, has he been briefed on the subject of UFOs? Because he has. I've been told he's been briefed on crash flying saucers. And about 4 of them, 4 state directors told me, I don't want to ask him the question. I don't want to embarrass him.
Yeah, you're kind of like outing him, aren't you?
Well, sure, you're outing him. But if the UFO community isn't going to out him or ask the question, why should we expect the government to out themselves?
Yeah.
Why should we expect the media to go and ask the stupid question?
Well, because
they don't want to. Nobody wants to be the stupid people, and even the UFO people don't want to embarrass themselves or ask the stupid question. So we sort of assume that because it's a good idea, because it's a great and noble thing, and people would learn that that the government should raise the white flag and give up. And they're not going to do it because it's not in their interest, and because there are 100 very important issues on their plate, and they basically look at the polls and what are the top 20 things in the polls: unemployment, the deficit, whatever, and they go down the polls.
Yeah. So if top 10 was UFO disclosure, then it'd be an issue.
Probably,
right?
But exactly, and I don't think. I've looked at a lot of polls trying to see. I don't think it would be in the top 200 if you ask people their things. It's really not. It's an issue with you, and a number of people who are involved in it. But to the general, even my relatives and stuff, I get lots of my relatives come to me and say, you're still in that UFO thing, and I'm in it. And they say, well, whatever happened to the UFOs? What happened? They've gone away. And I go, no, they haven't gone away.
It's still like
the media.
It's the number 2 research topic on the internet, I think, as of.
I just going back to the general, I just can't help feel that it's better to have a general as a silent ally than to out him in public and then have other people look down on him and think, oh, he's a UFO nut.
No, that's true.
Where you could just look at him and you both can wink at each other and go, yeah, we know. And now you can do stuff on the inside. But as soon as he opens his mouth and tells everybody, yeah, I believe in UFOs, it's over.
Yeah.
He's not going to get any support from anybody because they're not going to get on board with him.
Right.
Okay, but so then you just let the government. This is what I say. Then if you're on their side, and that's what I said, if I'm on their side, I do exactly what they're doing. They're working at it hard. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to do whatever. Because people sort of figure like, there's Bush and he's a bad guy, and all the big industrial guys that have all the money, and they're sort of running it, and they're all evil guys. And I don't believe that. I think they're all George Bush Sr., who's rumored to have been, MJ-12 and Cheney and all these guys. They're not sitting there trying to figure out how to destroy the world for their grandchildren. They're doing what they actually think is right. And so I think that's something that we have to keep in mind. And Walker brought this out. He said, why should we change the rules to satisfy your curiosity? And it was like, there are rules. These guys are playing. They may be totally deceived about what they're doing, and off base or whatever, but they actually believe that what they're doing is the right thing. And that's why none of them actually comes clean. That's why they
and you know, that
defections. If it was really an evil, bad thing, you would have people defecting all the time, and you don't have any defections. They're playing on their team, and they've got a solid team.
Hey, Grant, we're past the top of the hour. We need to stop and take a break. But we are going to open up the second half for questions to the chat room, and also you can call.
Yeah, we've got the phone lines open at 888-919-BELL. We'll come back with that right after the break. And, Grant, I want to talk to you a little more about Black Ops stuff, too. So
Okay.
We'll be right back with Grant Cameron.
Truth Theorem Radio.
Hi, can you hear my voice? Imagine how many other people can hear it too. If you have advertising needs, then look no further. The Inception Radio Network currently has openings for on-air advertisements and radio show sponsorships. Given any thought to your target demographic? Inception has you covered there too. Advertising on a network gives you multiple opportunities to advertise on a wide variety of radio show broadcasts, and we have one to fit every advertising need. You know, in recent years, internet radio has exhibited a phenomenal listener growth. An Arbitron Edison survey shows that online radio boosts at least 33 million unique visitors each week and 54 million each month. And that number amazingly continues to grow. And these listeners are a part of many businesses' core demographics. And surveys have shown that internet radio listeners are far more likely than regular radio listeners to spend money on a whole range of activities. You know, internet listeners vote, they dine out and eat fast food, and they grab a cup of coffee. And here's the interesting one. They buy items online at a much higher rate than all other market segments combined. Internet radio also enables businesses to connect with consumers during work hours, where increasingly more lifestyle decisions are being made. Advertise with the best. The Inception Radio Network offers competitive advertising rates to fit just about anyone's advertising budget. Stop by today at www.inceptionradionetwork.com or call us toll-free at 1-888-919-2355. Get the word out. Get results with the Inception Radio Network.
No longer need we live a charming scene like this.
This is not a test of the emergency broadcasting system. Please stand by.
And now we take you live on location with Lucy Lips from KRAP News.
We have breaking news. There are no cars on the streets, hungry people in the restaurant, or anxious shoppers in the mall. The movie theaters, gas stations, and sports auditoriums are empty.
We interrupt this interruption to bring you this important interruption. Please stand by.
This just in. The mysterious Wednesday night mass evacuation phenomenon has been explained. People all over the world are flocking to the Inception Radio Network to hear Truth Theorem Radio with Warren, Jason, and Rob, followed by Project White Paper with Chase Kloetsky and Michael Rambacher every Wednesday night.
We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
That overlooks the avenue with someone sharing a delight.
Yuckity, yuckity, yuckity,
This
yuckity.
and that and cocktails for two.
sure this is legal?
I don't know. It's fun though, isn't it?
And we are back.
Back with Grant Cameron. Hey,
Wow.
Grant said a mouthful so far, and he has outlined the whole ufology history almost. I kind of wanted to get into Black Ops stuff a little bit, Grant. You mentioned you're into Black Ops stuff, and I'm kind of interested in that now too.
Exactly. We need him to talk about this now while he's poking around, because we may not be able to talk to him.
You get on the black list.
There you go. So.
The main aspect that I've sort of worked on is to follow the CIA guys that have been involved. The first one was Arthur Lundahl through the 1970s. He was involved in a number of sort of UFO cases. He used to run the National Photographic Interpretation Center, which is one of the most highly classified CIA operations, which analyzed all the U-2 SR-71 and spy satellite photographs. He also did the analysis for the photographs for the Robertson panel in the 1950s. He was fascinated in UFOs and had some interaction with different researchers. And after him was Dr. Kit Green, who was up till 1983. And he was there when they filed the Freedom of Information Act request with the CIA, where they got, I think, 1,500 pages, something like that. And he talks about what happened on the inside, where he had some of his personal UFO stuff and ran into a lot of trouble with the CIA, like, why have you got this stuff here? And it was sort of, I think at that point where the CIA started to realize that any records that you keep sort of are going to come back to haunt you. And the one I watch now is Dr. Ronald Pandolfi, who is at the CIA, then worked inside the Obama White House. He was with the National Intelligence Office, which briefs the president. And he was there, I think, for about a year. Now he's back with the CIA. And he leaks an awful lot of stuff that goes through Dan Smith. And I know a lot of people don't really sort of trust Dan Smith. I really watch very closely what Dan Smith says, because he's had over 1,000 conversations with Pandolfi.
Yeah.
And Pandolfi is sort of that interaction, or that sort of whatever's happening that you can tell for sure, like Black Ops, is the most you're going to get is what Ronald Pandolfi is showing. And I think what it comes down to is that they've made all the records disappear. I think that was one of Pandolfi's jobs, was to make sure that there are no records. He did that also with he's the guy that shut down the remote viewing program in 1995. And I think the problem was that the remote viewing program, there was a lot of leaks. Jim Mars was about to come out with a book that was actually blocked for a couple of years. He couldn't publish this book, and he had picked up the remote viewing story and he had all the names of the people and exactly who the remote viewers were, and was coming out with this stuff. And I think what Pandolfi did there was shut it down so it can go into the black world and move this sort of, they call it phenomenology. So UFOs, remote viewing, ghosts, all this kind of stuff, it's all in the same category. And I think they're working desperately at this kind of stuff. They'd be crazy not to. And you've seen some going back into the 60s and 70s, where the CIA realized that the Russians were working on it, and then suddenly realized that you may not believe in this kind of stuff, but if you're wrong and the Russians are right and it's for real, they get the weapon. And I think that's what all this comes down to, the Black Ops and all this kind of stuff, is that this is the ultimate technology. If, for example, the abduction technology, if you are in the black world and you can develop the technology where you can abduct somebody, you can basically go over and abduct the head of the Soviet Union or Russia, put a bunch of stuff in his head, talk to him, know what he's thinking, put him back in his bed, and be back in Washington for lunch. I mean, this is just amazing technology. So there is absolutely no way anybody can say that they're not working on it. They absolutely are working on it. They'd be absolutely insane not to work on it. They just don't want to work on it in public. And the other aspect I worked very strongly on, I wrote an article which is the highest hit article on my website. It was unbelievable. The story of Area 51. The Area 51, as you know, this Annie Jacobson came out with this best-selling book. When I published my article, and it was a sort of a counter to her book to say what's the real story of Area 51. It's the story of Bob Lazar, which we had done in this UFO as MJ-12 in the government. We had actually done the story back in 1989 when the story was actually breaking. I had contact with some of the people who were involved at that time, and the story was fairly accurate. But what I did is I went to update the story because Richard Dolan is talking about republishing the book. So I wanted to update the Area 51 story, and then I discovered a bunch of stuff that I really known about because I went through all the old interviews of George Knapp and John Lear and all sorts of stuff. And what I came to the conclusion there was that they actually did have the technology at Area 51. And George Knapp has over 24 witnesses that basically back up the Bob Lazar story. And when I put my article up, I had 150,000 hits in 2 months.
Holy cow.
The Area 51 story is really popular. You think UFOs is popular. Compared to all my other UFO stories, there's nothing has gone down like Area 51. It's just like people are just can't get enough of Area 51. And what I discovered was, in my opinion, was that it was a setup. That Bob Lazar, for people that don't know the story, was claimed he'd gone on there. He'd worked on flying saucers at S4, just outside the Area 51. And when he came out, he passed a bunch of lie detector tests, but his background didn't check. He didn't have the degrees that he claimed. The story all sort of fell apart. What I discovered in redoing this for the book, going back and reinvestigating this, is that he was given three interviews when he was going for the job there. And in the second interview, the first question in the second interview was, "What's your relationship with John Lear, and what do you know about him?" So they knew before Lazar went on to Area 51, they knew that he was friends with John Lear. And John Lear was running around talking about crashes and aliens, and it was a pretty powerful guy in Las Vegas at the time. So basically they set it up knowing that he had a bad background and put him on the base, allowed him to see a bunch of stuff, then released him knowing that once the story got out and people realized that his background was bad, they would discredit Lazar, but the story would still remain, and they would get the story out. They just didn't realize how much the story would take off, and the fact that George Knapp would actually spend 6 months working on it and would actually get one witness who he has talked about once or twice that I've heard about. And this is a witness that he determined that if Lazar was telling the truth, this guy would know. And he tracked this guy down. He got to know the guy. He sort of interacted with the guy, and then eventually got the guy to talk and first talked about Area 51, and then confirmed, yes, they had a live alien at Area 51, confirmed the whole story, and that this guy has given or he's provided with his son, for George Knapp, a video statement once he dies, that his son will release this to George Knapp, telling the whole story of what happened at Area 51. So those are the two main things I was working on, that the technology is going on. It's highly protected, especially if you read Annie Jacobson's book and you see how much work that they did to cover up the different things that were happening at Area 51. And she's talking not about so much about UFOs, but talking about the A-12 and the SR-71 and the U-2, the amount of money and lengths that they would go to cover up what they were doing there. It goes back to what Walker says, the rules. Why should we change the rules? That there are rules, and it's very carefully regulated, and the people that are in it believe what they're doing is right, and they are working on it very, very hard. But as to where it's taking place, it was at Area 51 now. Some people say it's in Utah. Some people say it's on the north end of Area 51, the test site there. As to where it is, I'm not sure. I think they have so many different stories, as they do with Lazar, that there's so much disinformation going on that you really can't tell what's going on. That once anybody gets something concrete, they just flood the UFO community other stories that you can't tell what's real and what's not real, and that's how they cover it up. Plus the fact that the UFO community really doesn't put any pressure on anybody. And when you do have people who try to get to it, the one guy worked for Senator Byrd. I don't know if you know this story. He was working with Stephen Greer, and he was convinced that something was going on, and he had interactions with George Knapp, and he actually got onto Area 51, and he said, I've got a top secret security clearance and subpoena power, and I can't get to this. That this is the varsity team of the black budget programs. And here was a guy who actually, Byrd had this guy who was going to break the cover up, and he had the power. He had the top secret clearance, and he had the subpoena power to bring people out, and he couldn't get to it. So it's that well covered that you can't, you simply are not going to get to it. It's that well done. And they spend, I don't know what the amount of, it's the amount of money that they spend on a program, they spend way more on the security than they do on the program.
Yeah, for sure.
We're not gonna get to it. We can just get glimpses, and that's where I look at people like Ronald Pandolfi. He's sort of the gatekeeper as to protecting that end of the thing. But if you see him talking about it, and he's talking about it sort of not in a bad light, if him and especially Kit Green, Dr. Kit Green is not a crazy guy. And if you've read the book, there was a book that was just written about these guys from, what was it called? The Mirage Men. These guys from England came over and wrote a book about UFO disinformation. And their estimation was that there's really nothing to the UFO thing. It was all disinformation by the U.S. government to cover up advanced government programs and stuff like that. And when he talked to Kit Green says, yeah, it's all for real. And there's this disinformation thing that's put out there. And the authors are talking about the fact that, they felt like they're starting to sweat, and they couldn't believe that this guy who was a top guy inside the CIA was actually saying, yeah, this thing's for real. And that there's this program that to cover it up. And so if you take a look at the whole thing, Kit Green is one of the best witnesses, even though he really isn't read in. I know I heard from somebody that he tried to get, he's a neurologist, he's a physician. He tried to get read into the autopsy, the alien autopsy thing. It was not allowed to be read in. So you hear these behind the scenes stories, but as to where the technology is taking place, who's running it, I think everybody's just guessing.
Wow, man. So, to what extent do you think that the government has communication with aliens?
I don't think the government really has. That's my impression now. I don't think government really has anything to do with anything. I think they're completely cut out of the loop. There is a certain very tight group of people, sort of semi-related to the government. But I don't think, if you're talking about Obama and his science advisors, people, none of these really have any. What Walker told us was, yes, there has been some communication, but he basically stated some. The other story that I know for sure is true, and that's this story. I don't know if you know the story about the Holloman Air Force Base story. It was a deal that happened in the 1970s, and I know the guy really well. Bob Emenegger was one of the co-producers of this documentary, UFOs Past, Present, and Future, and he talks about the fact that Bob Emenegger and Alan Sandler, who was doing documentaries for the military, CIA, had these connections, suddenly get this offer to do this UFO documentary. And basically, all the doors are open. Every Blue Book guy talks to them. Arthur Lundahl, I mentioned before, is this CIA guy. He tells them about the fact that in 1959, and he wouldn't do it on camera. In 1959, the U.S. government, or the Navy, had become aware of a woman in Elliott, Maine, who lived just down the street from Betty Hill. And she was a contactee. Betty Hill was the abductee, but she was a contactee, claimed to have been in contact with an alien by the name of Alpha. The U.S. Navy finds out about this. They send 2 Navy guys. They fly up to talk to her. She teaches one of these Navy guys who works with Arthur Lundahl at the CIA, teaches them how to contact the aliens. They fly back to Washington, D.C. This fellow goes to, I think his name was Neesham, goes to Arthur Lundahl, tells him the story. Lundahl's fascinated, says, sit down, let's see if we can get contact. They're in the National Photographic Interpretation Center where they analyze the U-2 SR-71 photographs, one of the most top secret places in the world. They're in there and they're channeling to this Alpha, the alien. And this guy has been taught how to do this. And in this documentary that was put out in the 1970s, you can actually see Bob Friend, who was the head of Blue Book, tells this story. He gets called in a couple days after this incident and is given the whole routine of what happened. They sit this guy down, they start asking questions about this, about that, and then they say, we'd like you to prove yourself. And AFA responds back through this Navy guy. He says, well, what do you want? And he says, we want you to show yourself. And then the guy says, go to the window. And they go to the window and they see this flying saucer fly by over the Capitol. This is in Washington, D.C. And Bob Friend, if you look at the documentary, Bob Friend actually tells this story. He was the head of Blue Book. He's telling this story about him being called in a couple days later. Bob Emenegger tells me that he interviewed Arthur Lundahl, CIA, top CIA guy, won the National Security Award. Only 12 guys have won it. He won it. He tells that Bob Emenegger, he says, yes, it all happened. Yes, we saw the UFO. I wrote the memo. I've got the memo on my website. He wrote the memo. Names all the CIA guys that were in the room, the fact that Friend was called in, the fact that this thing flew by, and then Bob says, well, can you go on camera? He says, no, Bob, you don't understand. I work with the CIA. I'm on duty. I'm not going on camera. So that's why they get Bob Friend to go and tell this story about the CIA sitting this Navy guy down and getting this communication. Bob Friend goes back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He goes to his commanding general out above Blue Book and says, we need to investigate. This is the most fascinating story. This woman, this contact, and now they've got this Navy guy, this contact at the CIA and all this sort of stuff. And the general says to him, leave it alone. There's another agency working on it. And Bob Friend said that's the last he ever heard of it. So there you have a communication. And then the big...
And that's funny because we're spending all this money on SETI. All we have to do is think it.
Yeah.
And they'll come. Wow.
Well, exactly. That's one of the problems. You guys did the thing about Phil Larson. You did the little comedy sketch with Phil Larson. Phil Larson is a public relations officer in the president's science office.
I don't think he likes us anymore, by the way. I don't think he likes us.
We're not on the Christmas card list or any of those things anymore.
But you look at him, he's writing a different article every day, but you also look at him, and I've mentioned this before, he worked on Mars. He worked on a Mars project. That was he really is not a scientist. This is his background. He worked on the Mars thing. So he comes into the president's science office. Now, what's the chances that Phil Larson is going to write anything about the fact that we should be looking here on Earth for evidence of ET visitation when he's worked on Mars? They just sent a Mars probe to Mars to drill a hole in a rock, and it cost them $2.5 billion. It's $1 billion over budget. Who in their right mind, if Larson worked on Mars, comes out and says, well, I think maybe we should look on Earth. Maybe these UFO people have some evidence and we can find ET on Earth. Who's going to spend another $2.5 billion to send the next probe to Mars? NASA shuts down. There's vested interest, and Larson is one of the guys who has a vested interest. He has to protect the Mars thing. We're looking for evidence of ET out there, and that was his statement. And it's not a threatening statement. We believe there's extraterrestrial life out in the universe. We believe that there might be some minor small types of life on Mars. That's not threatening. The idea that they're here, now that's threatening.
That is threatening.
He won't even go there.
Yeah.
So that's the whole Larson thing, that there are vested interests of people who can't possibly ever admit that we can look here. The SETI thing is like totally stupid. You send a message out 10,000 years and wait 10,000 years for the message to come back. It's make work projects that people have these vested interests in.
Wow.
But there have been communications. I've talked to a guy when I lectured in Ireland. I talked to a guy who runs the King's Observatory there, who said, and this guy's he showed me the technology he had. He had this thing that they sell to the U.S. military. It's a sort of like a telescope type thing, with a bunch of software in it, and they can photograph. I have to get the details right. They can photograph a microwave tower in the dark at 10 miles. And I saw the photograph. It looked like it was about half a mile away. And in 2 miles, I can actually photograph at night in color. And so this guy is basically telling me, yes, we can actually communicate with these aliens. These things are flying along, and they can actually send signals, and they can make these contacts. And I'm sitting there in this guy's laboratory, and these are two top scientists in Ireland, and this guy's telling me this whole thing, and they're connected with some guy in Italy, and it just sort of blew me away that there are these people around that haven't got much contact. Or you take a look at the Emmenegger story, the Holloman Air Force Base story. And this is in the documentary, in the 1973 documentary, and he worked for the Nixon administration. He knew Bob Haldeman, and he asked Bob Haldeman, the chief of staff for Nixon, he said, what about the landing at Holloman Air Force Base? And he said, well, yeah, I sort of heard something about it, but didn't get into it. And the whole story there was that had communication with the aliens, and they had made an arrangement for UFOs to land at Holloman Air Force Base. This happened in May of 1971, and that there was film cameras set up. There was an aerial a helicopter. They were on the ground. They knew this thing was coming in. Linda Howe was offered this film. Emmenegger said they had it in their possession. They actually had the film, and the one guy described what was on the film, and the fact that these UFOs landed, and that the aliens got out. They met the high-ranking officials at Holloman. They walked down. They stored the craft in a building that Emmenegger actually went to. And so here you have an actual contact where there's no doubt about the fact that this did appear to take place. And if you look at the documentary, they actually have 8 seconds of the film. The actual film that was given to them is in the actual documentary. And that was discovered later. Bob admitted to me, yes, they had put the film in there. And that this happened in 1974. And then I said to him, you know, Bob, this is familiar. This looks like Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He said, oh, I didn't tell you that story. I said, what story?
No, really?
He said, well, we worked with Annie Spielberg. Annie Spielberg worked with Bob Emmenegger on a number of UFO and hypnosis, and they did a bunch of small documentaries that never really got anywhere. And he said, Steven Spielberg got a copy of our documentary in 1974 about the Holloman landing. And this was the basis of his Close Encounters. The story in Close Encounters is the story of Holloman. They've got the people there, and they're waiting for it, and they've got the communication with the aliens come out and this sort of stuff. And that Steven Spielberg's mother had said to Bob Emmenegger, I saw your version of the landing, and I saw Steven's version of the landing, and Steven's version is better. Now, this is something where...
Got a bigger budget. There's a big difference there.
That's the magic thing, and it's actually Steven Spielberg based it on an actual event. He just changed it. He changed the location from Holloman to Wyoming and a little bit. But I even
got to stick some children in there, too.
On TV, and if you see the Holloman, the Close Encounters, they actually have 3 crafts sitting on the end of the runway. This is exactly the story. 3 crafts, and the one lands and the other 2 fly off, and the one lands and the aliens come out. It's exactly the same story. Stephen just changed the story around. So you find these interesting things, and I believe that contact, I've heard Bob tell the story enough times, and I know they had the film, and I know this is actually for real. In fact, they still have a film, a top secret film that they were given. That I said to myself, well, what happened to that film? They launched the missile at Vandenberg Air Force Base going over the Pacific, and these 2 UFOs fly along, and they're circling the missile. And they've still got this film, and it's sitting in a vault in Oregon, and they never gave it back. So they were given all this top secret film, and then in 1983, under the Reagan administration, after the first documentary, they were contacted by Bob Scott, who ran DAVA, which is the Defense Audiovisual Agency at Norton Air Force Base that controls all the film from the U.S. military. And the CIA had a studio there to tape and to do training films. All this stuff is there. Bob Scott contacts him, and the other guy contacts him is this General Miller, who was Ronald Reagan's first agent in Hollywood. And they tell the story about how Miller brings in Bob to Air Force Base, and he brings in J.L. Hynek, and he said, okay, to the security guy, he says, okay, I want you to get all the UFO film out, and we want to give it to Hynek. And the guy said, I'm sorry, General, you have to have a requisition for that. You can't just ask for the UFO film. He said, God damn, I'll have your ass. You get that film out for Hynek. And it fell apart because he wouldn't put in the requisition. Now, General Miller, Bob Emenegger tells a story about the fact that they talked to him, and he was talking about the fact that this was all for real and that there was communication. And they tell the story about, they go to Bob's place, and Bob's wife is telling this story, how Miller is there and J.L. Hynek is sitting in the room, and Miller comes walking in and he says, I know how it works. They're voice activated. And he starts talking about being inside this flying saucer. Wow. And Bob Emenegger's wife says, J.L. Hynek's mouth just fell open. And her impression was that he suddenly realized that he was out of the loop. He had no idea what was going on. Here's this General Miller who's talking about the fact this is all for real and that he's actually been inside a craft. And here's Hynek dealing with UFO sightings and trying to get anything. And he basically finds out he hasn't had any access to anything. Wow. And so Emenegger goes to Coleman, who was the guy who gave them the film and ordered the film back to the Pentagon, who was public relations officer for the Pentagon. And he says to him, well, what about Hynek? And he says, well, we never gave Hynek a top secret clearance. He never had a top secret clearance. It would have cost too much money. We just never gave it to him. So you get in behind the scenes and you get these stories. And these aren't stories that are told by some little old lady in Nebraska. These are thstories of people in the White House and working for the White House and public relations officers for the Pentagon and generals. And these are people who are telling these stories that, yes, we've had the contact, we've had some interactions, but all that stuff has disappeared.
That's crazy. Hey, Grant, we need to get some questions from the chat room. This has been great. We're running out of time. It's gone really fast.
We need a 4-hour show.
We got to have 4 hours, definitely, for sure.
And my gosh, man. Grant, you just have a treasure trove of information and stories.
Holy cow. We reserve the right to have you back on.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. I'm sorry. We're going to have
to. Shiloh's got some questions from the chat room here.
From the chat room.
What you got, Shai?
Go ahead, Shai.
Alien Contactee would like to know if you know any alien races that are at war with us or with other alien races.
That's not my field of expertise. I don't really, other than the actual, is there contact with some sort of aliens? I know all the stories. I really, it's not my expertise. I would just say that the alien mutilation stuff doesn't seem too good. But I would say that in terms of war, if they wanted to wipe us out, they would have done it long before we would have developed the technology we have. The longer they leave it, the more it appears that they aren't hostile because they would have taken us out earlier. We're developing more and more technology.
But in your investigations, have you discovered that we're not talking about just like one generic type of gray alien or type of alien?
Exactly.
Are you discovering that there may be more than one type?
Absolutely. I would say that there are probably thousands.
And
that's one of the problems.
I'm going to sleep better tonight.
The other problem we had in ufology was that I always made a dispute that in the 1950s, a lot of people are just throwing out the contactees. This is all nonsense. These people are all crazy. Nothing happened until Betty Hill got abducted in 1961. So we go from the sort of the arrogant position that there's nobody in the universe except for us, and now we move to a lot of the abduction researchers to the thing that there's grays and there's us and nobody else.
Wow.
I think everybody's basically telling the truth. I think I hold a lot of credence for a lot of the contactee stuff that happened in the 1950s. I would say that the vast majority of people who have had some sort of contact throughout history of ufology are all basically trying to tell the story the way they have. I don't think there's as many hoaxes as the people are sort of claiming, and that's what happens is we sort of jump from one to another. So we get into abductions and we throw out everything else. Like nothing happened until 1961, until Betty was abducted. Everything before that was just nonsense. Everybody was lying, and I don't think that's true.
We have more.
Lots of reasons.
We have more
questions. Shy?
Lots of them. Nobody phoned in yet? What's wrong? You people forgot how to use the telephone?
Yeah. 888-919-23.
It's the internet age.
I know. That's what it is.
Go ahead, Shai.
Starlight from the chat room would like to know if you believe that discussions behind the scenes and secret documentation would get us more information rather than going public.
Can you give me the question again?
Starlight from the chat room. Do you believe that discussions behind the scenes and secret documentation would get us more information rather than going public?
Oh yeah. I think that's what they're doing. There's stuff going behind the scenes. Leslie Kane is talking about working behind the scenes. I think that they are interacting. Ronald Pandolfi said at one point, we can't control the phenomena, so we watch the researchers. I think in a lot of ways, we are doing all their work for them. They just sort of feed stuff in, and they are watching very carefully what we're doing. We file the sightings, especially if you take a look at this story of, I know for a fact, I've been in ufology long enough, I know there is no money in ufology. And then suddenly, MUFON, you get Bigelow showing up with $675,000 from some client of his. That's intelligence money, no doubt about it. And so
we're looking for that intelligence money too. If the intelligence agency would like to donate to Truth Theorem Radio,
whatever little intelligence we have here,
I'm willing to share some recipes, some microwave recipes.
We have a donate now button on our website. Yeah, just go there. As many zeros as you can, please. That would be great.
Was that
so you know there's no money in ufology as well?
No.
We hear that a lot. Was that shameless of us there, Grant?
I don't think we've talked to a UFO guy yet that's loaded. They're all well known, but
this is a very humble field.
Absolutely, for sure.
What else, Shai?
That's why I think a lot of people are just doing what they think is right. I don't think there's a lot of people, because you'll hear a lot of stories, they're just scamming to try to make money. And you know, and I know, you have the site, I have the site. We know there's no money. That's sort of out there to say that people are doing it for money.
Yeah, that's right. Another question, Shyla?
Starlight would also like to know if you think that most information is being squirreled away in private industries.
Ooh,
a good question.
That is a good question.
That's one of the stories that it's in private industry because SAIC and Boeing and Lockheed, and because there you're not subject to the FOIA. I think that's a lot of it. And that's why I said Ronald Pandolfi, that was part of what I think is going on, is to make sure there is no documentation that will ever come up from a government agency. However you got to do it, whether you put it in private industry or make it ultra deep black, destroy the documents, whatever you got to do. That is the ultimate thing, is do not have any documents surface.
Yeah.
Well, what technology would you say? What technology would you say that we are all familiar with that is alien technology that's like leaked out? Anything?
Velcro.
That's leaked out.
Velcro.
Velcro came from aliens. I was
Hot
told
pockets. Those little sleeves. If that's not alien technology, I don't know what is. Is there anything that we could maybe point to?
The Nitinol argument, I think, is pretty good. The Tony Bragalia, his argument about the memory metal that was developed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I think that is legit. Some of the anti-gravity technology, I think they've got some of that. They've back-engineered some of that, although it's not public. Because if you look at the Area 51 book, you'll see that she talks about technology up until about 1970, and she even says in the book after that she's in the black too. She doesn't know. So we're still, in terms of what she was leaked, what was going on in Area 51, we're still 40 years out. So we don't know what they've been doing there for 40 years.
So you're saying that it's mostly basically this back technology. They're just working backwards. This isn't. No alien came down and said, "Okay, here's the recipe for a microwave oven. Here's a recipe for the laser light. Here's a recipe for this."
Yeah, no, that did happen. It happened if you go to my stuff, and I think some of it's on my website, the Wilbur Smith stuff. He was given technology for he didn't call it. He called it gravity control, and he claimed that it was all given to him by the aliens. The other thing, he was claimed that there was a binding meter thing that was given to him, and a thing to communicate with the aliens was given to him. And the one was kind of an interesting story because the gravity control thing, they had one of the things I was asking him was, what the technology they're working on and how they communicate with the aliens. And this Art Bridge was telling me some of the stuff, and the one was about this gravity control thing, that they've been given this thing about gravity control, that they had a plate with ceramic magnets on it, and they were spinning it, and they were using a vacuum cleaner motor and a washing machine motor in combination, and they were spinning this thing at about 17,000 revs a minute. And if you take a look at the technology now, you see NASA's working on it. There's a group in Europe working on this now, and to reduce gravity by spinning this a spinning magnetic field.
Oh,
sort of
I've got a
ties
weekend
into the
project. I can see that.
Yeah.
They had this communication. And one of the interesting stories was that they had, he would get a lot of this stuff in the middle of the night. He would just get up and he would write this stuff down and not even know he's writing it. And then they had the weird one was they had a blind telex operator. This is in the 1950s. And the blind telex operator would give them messages from this AFA, which is the same alien that the CIA had communication with. And so this Art Bridge was telling me this story. I'd heard the rumor and I said, what's the story about this thing exploding? He said, well, we were in the garage. It was Saturday morning. We were working with Wilbur, and we were about to run this thing where we're spinning this plate at 17,000 revs a minute or whatever. And suddenly there was a phone call. The blind telex operator was on the phone, and he said, I've got a message from AFA. He says, shield the experiment. So Wilbur said, okay, that's it. Shut her down. They built this brick wall. Wilbur talks about this in a lecture. They built this brick wall around this thing.
Wow.
They started up, and the thing explodes, and there was ceramic magnets stuck in the wall. And Wilbur said somebody would have been killed if we hadn't followed this. And he doesn't get into too much of the message about how the message came, but this metallurgist expert told me it came from this guy who said AFA said shield the experiment, and this experiment, but that was given to him. This experiment was given to him by the aliens.
That is crazy.
And he says he even writes a book. It's called The New Science. It's a book that Wilbur wrote. He never finished it. There was a couple of chapters. He died before he finished it. But this book, and he says right in the beginning of the book, and this is the guy that ran the Canadian government UFO program, said this was given to us by beings more advanced than we were. The entire book is he claims, and it's all about spins of magnetic fields and all sorts of stuff that's very complex science.
And
Holy cow.
That's not the only instance of people saying that they got stuff from aliens or some outside force. It goes clear back in history to Bach and Tesla and all the great people say they got it from somewhere outside themselves.
You know what? We're done. Grant, we have to take a break.
Prepare for Grant Cameron Part 2.
Yeah.
So coming sometime in the future, because I have a feeling we just scratched the surface with you, Grant.
Yeah.
Part 3 and 4. Part 3 and 4 soon
It's been great having you on.
Thanks so much.
And thanks to the chat room for all your questions. Sorry we didn't get to them all, but we will definitely have Grant back on.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with more.
Thank you,
Thanks, Grant. We appreciate you.
Good night. Thanks for your interest.
Thank you.
Truth Theorem Radio.
I don't know what this full disclosure is. I don't know why they even bother bringing it. I only hear. Why don't you just give it to somebody else to do it? Why is it always us that have to do it?
The Director of Science and Technology Policy brings this emergency White House meeting to order. Quiet down, everybody. Quiet down. Thank you all for coming. This disclosure petition fiasco has been dumped on our desk. Anybody got any ideas?
Which version of the truth are we going to be using this time? I can't remember.
Well, the truth is, the official story's above our pay grade.
Hell, it's above the president's pay grade.
Oh, that's
I don't even want to get involved in this. This is just too much.
This is horrible.
Why don't we?
This is going to be
somebody
so.
else?
Nobody's going to believe what we say anyway. I know. We need a distraction.
Yeah, distraction. I like
Distraction. Good idea.
What about that feline flu we developed last year?
Feline flu. You know, we already vetoed Project Pussy Flu.
Yeah, the name was horrible anyway. Should we fire up HARP?
No, we can't afford another earthquake in the wrong part of the world.
I don't like earthquakes.
How about we mess with the economy?
That's already
in control.
No, we're not.
Hey, are you guys thinking what I'm thinking?
You know, we're all banned from the Vulcan porn website now.
I knew we shouldn't have done that.
No, what I'm thinking, we need to get Phil to do it.
What? Isn't Phil the janitor?
Yeah, but he handled that 9/11 thing pretty good.
Hey, Phil!
Si, senor.
Hey, Phil, what do you know about UFOs?
Nothing?
Perfect. Hey, that's going to work. Hey, we need you to write something for us. We'll find someone else to clean up.
Okay.
Oh, this is going to work.
This is
They're going to buy this.
He has a nice ass. Are you suffering from dizziness, lack of energy, a feeling of unrest, or bloating? Then you must be listening to Truth Theorem Radio, and we apologize for nothing.
Man, Rob, why did Warren make us come all the way back out to his shed?
I know. I didn't
secret
even
meeting thing. I'm not sure what's up with
the,
this.
I didn't get to walk through the house. I got to walk through the fence.
What's with the pet store truck?
Holy
out
cow,
Larry's
that's a lot
Lizards?
of aquariums.
What's up with
What is he doing? Is this a side job now? He's going to raise snakes?
Hey, Warren.
Hold on.
Oh, hey, guys, you're here. Come here. Check this out.
What do you got going on?
Holy
Look at this.
cow.
What is all this stuff? You got... Is that meat?
Yeah, it's jerky.
Those are slices of meat
Jerky.
drying.
I'm making jerky.
You're drying meat on your lawnmower handle.
Yeah.
Really?
No, it's but this isn't just regular jerky. It's iguana jerky.
Iguana jerky.
Yeah. No. Check this out. You want an iguana?
Oh, my gosh.
That's your tagline?
Yeah.
Just because it rhymes doesn't mean it's good,
Oh,
dude.
my gosh. That's gross.
No, but I called you guys here to test it out for me.
I'm not
Now,
eating that.
Have you had this professionally tested?
What do you
Yeah.
mean? No, that's what you guys are for.
No. You got to have it tested first before people can eat it.
I'm not. Rob, you test it.
I'm not eating it.
I'm not
You
going
eat
to
it.
test it. No, I'm not.
Hey.
Who are we going to get to test it?
I know who we can get.
Who's that?
MyChem Analytical Laboratory.
Oh, MyChem tests everything.
That's right. They'll test it. They can check for E. coli, salmonella, all kinds of things.
Wow. How would we get a hold of them?
I think I know their number. It's 801-737-2600.
Wow. Cool. What if we
call
don't have
them.
a phone? What would we do if we didn't have a phone?
You could find them on the web.
On the web?
Yeah, they're at mychemanalytical.com.
All right. So, Warren, get it tested.
Get
man.
it tested.
Yeah.
I'm not eating it unless you test it.
Call
You want an
MyChem.
iguana?
Iguana.
You want an iguana?
That's bad.
Actually, not bad.
It's all part of the plan.
Are you sure this is legal? I don't know. It's fun though, isn't it?
And we are back. We're back.
Wow, that was a great interview. We need like 2 or 3 more of those with him, I think, to get,
I don't
get
even
everything
think
out
we
of his brain.
scratched anything. Really, you
Yeah.
said scratch the surface. I don't even think we got to the surface yet. I think we were just looking at it a little bit.
I took quite a few deep breaths. I just could never
What
get
a
it
guy,
out.
man!
He knows everything. Well, that was great.
Wow,
Absolutely.
I want to talk to him more.
So, what do you think? What do you think he?
I've always been a believer, so there's been no question for me. I just find it so interesting that he's like pushing for this disclosure so much, but he personally needs none. He's a knower,
He
not
knows it,
not a believer anymore.
Well, and he kind of alluded to that. Maybe they don't really know or don't really care. You know, there's a few people here and there maybe that do, but
when you say
as a whole in the government, as a whole, the government really isn't a big enough issue for them to look into. Really.
I think we would have more success if we went covert. If we, went underground, Senator,
like Starlight said,
do you have any experience with UFOs? Do you believe in yada yada? And I'll tell you. I'll never admit it in public, but I'll tell you privately.
Right.
And we could get a lot more done and say, okay,
what are you going to get done though? If everything's off the record, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, if somebody's,
for you, you'll know it. Then you'll just be like Grant.
But let's say we have a senator or somebody, and he's a knower. He's either had a sighting of his own, or maybe even some contact of some kind. But he's not going to tell anybody because it would be political suicide. Yeah. So if somehow you contact him and now he's on your side. So if some kind of bill comes through Congress where we want total disclosure, he can, put his little check mark on it without everybody going, "Oh, that you're the nut." You're the crazy guy. Because openly, they're not going to go for it.
Right.
They're just not going to go for it. And I think every American has an idea that the government knows more than they're saying.
I don't know about that. I think,
really?
I could see to where, you know what, they're not saying anything because they don't know anything and they don't want anybody to know they don't know.
As a whole, probably, as a whole.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think there's divisions and organizations and secret divisions and secret projects that do know. But I think as an official whole stance of the government, maybe they don't know.
And I think that probably the people that know about it shouldn't exist. The entities that know about it, the compartments that know about it, man, you probably shouldn't be around. That's probably.
Well,
not
my
right.
question is, how do you apply for a job in that department?
Oh, they pick you, man. They pick you.
They just grab you off the street or something?
Yeah, I bet you. You got to be,
Maybe.
I've got a
There's
job
a
for you.
2-star general that comes up and knocks on your door.
It's all in who you know,
I'll bet you.
think, in that game.
I bet. Wow. It's kind of like the...
and they don't even know what they're recruiting for. They were just told, go talk to this dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you have to be really good at building toasters, man. You can't, you can't just, you have to know what you're doing.
I worked in the Pentagon, and boy, nobody knows what each other is doing.
Hey, we got to wrap it up.
Oh, we have to go?
We're done.
Let's see. Next time here on Truth Theorem Radio, join us next Wednesday, February 8th. We have Jason Valenti. He's part of the Falcon Project.
Oh, right on. Right on.
That'll be cool.
Big feats.
Crypto people, look forward to next Wednesday.
Yeah, and stay tuned for a Project White Paper. They've got
Spider-Man.
What?
Spider-Man.
They have spiders?
Yeah, he's the dude that climbed the World Trade Center.
Yes.
With the suction cups. Yeah.
Captain Robert McDonald.
I call him Spider-Man.
On Project White Paper, he's on there?
Yes.
He's coming up next.
Right on.
So stay tuned. That's going to be awesome.
Well,
hey, thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
And join us next week with Jason Valenti on Truth Theorem Radio.
To this world and beyond, we wish you a good night, a good morning, a good afternoon, wherever you might be. And tune in next time when you'll hear Jason say...
I'm supposed to say something.
Until next time, this is Truth Theorem Radio, signing off.
Night, guys.
I'd say that was a pretty successful broadcast.
Now that's for some straight-up David Copperfield shit.
Great. Can I go throw up now?
That's very funny to me. Y'all ain't laughing though. I am just a figment of your imagination.